Hi, my name is Dr. Joseph Lau. I would like to speak with you today about how to use reactive discipline effectively with your child. I'd like to begin by defining discipline as caregiver behaviors that are intended to help children behave properly. Now, this is important to keep in mind because the goal is to help children behave properly. And so if we agree that's the goal of disciplinary practices, then we want to select practices that are effective at achieving that goal. We want to find the most effective techniques for dealing with child misbehavior so that we can accomplish our goal of getting them to behave properly. Now, there are three types of child discipline that are commonly practiced by parents. And these may have different names by different psychologists, but I think you'll recognize them when I talk about them. The first is what we're going to talk about today, which is reactive discipline. Reactive discipline refers to caregiver behaviors that occur in response to child misbehavior in order to curtail the reoccurrence of that misbehavior. So here you have a situation where the child does something wrong and you're going to respond to what the child is doing. So in some sense that you're reacting to the child. Another type of discipline is referred to as developmental discipline. Developmental discipline refers to caregiver behaviors that are intended to curtail child misbehaviors through age-appropriate means. In other words, you're going to select a form of intervention that is appropriate for your child. That means that you're going to want to think about your child's age, your child's social skills, your child's intelligence, self-control, and things like that, so that you tailor your intervention to what is likely to be most effective with your child. For example, you don't want to treat a 3-year-old child like a 7-year-old child because whatever you're doing with a 3-year-old child might not work. So you want to find something that works that's appropriate for your child. Now, the third type of discipline is proactive discipline. Proactive discipline refers to caregiver behaviors that are intended to prevent child misbehaviors from occurring in the first place. Proactive discipline is proactive because it occurs before the child misbehaves and often occurs even though the child has not misbehaved. So it is to stop the misbehaviors from occurring even to begin with. Now here there are various approaches that can be used as well as with developmental discipline. So we'll talk about those in another video. For now though, I want to focus on reactive discipline, which is the most common kind of disciplinary practices used by parents. Now there are several keys to reactive discipline, and I'll go over some of these in the next few minutes. The first, and arguably the most important of these, is to interrupt misbehavior as soon as possible. For example, if you find your child taking a cookie from the cookie jar in the kitchen counter, you may want to interrupt that before the child eats the cookie. The sooner you interrupt the misbehavior, the better it's going to be, because once a child eats the cookie, especially if they eat 2 or 3 of them, and they've gotten the pleasure of doing that, you now have a situation where the child has a positive consequence of their misbehavior. And that is going to be problematic because then you have to undo the damage of those positive consequences. So you want to make sure you intervene before those positive consequences kick in. Or if you can't, then at least you want to do so soon after that as you can, so that you can undo some of that damage of the positive consequences occurring with those misbehaviors. The next thing you want to do is to check your emotions. Now here, keep in mind, I'm not saying that emotions are bad or inappropriate. What I'm concerned about, though, is if a child misbehaves and you see them misbehaving, that many parents get upset with the children under those conditions. And while there's nothing wrong with being upset in general, my concern is that when parents are upset, they may take that out on the child. In other words, when parents are angry, they may yell at the child or do something else out of anger that may not be the best approach or may not be the best response to the child's misbehavior. It may not be the most effective to get that misbehavior to stop from occurring in the future. And so we want to think a little bit about that when we're going to discipline our children. Also, we want to select disciplinary practices that are minimally invasive. What I mean by that is that we want to select responses to our child's misbehavior that are going to achieve the goal without hurting the child any more than necessary. So for example, you don't want to spank the child if yelling at the child is going to work. You don't want to yell at the child if just expressing disapproval is going to work. And you don't want to tell the child you're unhappy if just looking at them in a certain way lets them know you've noticed they've done something wrong. And so again, use minimally invasive forms of discipline. Also, communicate with your child. A lot of times when children misbehave, they don't really know they're doing something wrong. So it's important to let them know they've done something wrong. Tell them what it was they did wrong if they don't know, and express disapproval so that you don't have to, again, spank the child, but you can tell the child that you're upset by what they did. You can tell the child you're disappointed or whatever it is that you want to use to communicate to your child. Let them know, again, what they've done wrong and that you're unhappy about that. Also, it's important to nurture critical thinking in your child. By critical thinking, I mean that you want your child to reflect on their behavior. You want your child to be aware that they've done something wrong, but you want them to do that also because you want them to be able to intervene in their own behavior. So once your child knows that a certain behavior is wrong or undesirable, then the child's in a position where they can see themselves doing that behavior in the future and then interrupt their own behavior. In other words, they can use self-control to stop themselves from doing that behavior in the future. And this can be very effective. Now, a lot of parents will react to their children's misbehavior by punishing the child. And we have to be very careful with this because punishment is very frequently misused. And so if you're going to punish your child, do so judiciously. Now, what I mean by that is, first of all, as I said before, use minimally invasive forms of punishment. In other words, you don't want to beat the child up if you can yell at them and that works. If possible, use logical consequences. What I mean by that is, let's say, for example, your child writes on the wall with a crayon. And instead of beating the child up, give the child a sponge and some soapy water and have them clean off the wall so that they can undo the damage they've done. And that's a natural consequence. Also, if you're going to be upset with the child and punish them, give them warnings. Let them know what they did wrong. Let them know that if they keep doing that, they're going to have some negative consequences. So you don't punish them right away, but you warn them that they're going to be punished. And by the way, if you give your child a warning, keep your word about the warnings. You don't want to be in a position where you're warning your child and your child continues to misbehave and you don't follow through. That's a problem because if you keep doing that, eventually what's going to happen is that your child is not going to listen to you anymore. Your child will form the idea that if you yell at them or tell them not to do something or even threaten them, it doesn't matter because you're not going to follow through. And so always keep your word about warnings. Also, use variety whenever possible. In other words, you want to not react in the same way every time to your child's misbehavior because eventually they can predict your behavior and they may start to find ways to get around what you usually do. And so you want to vary your approaches. So one time you might yell at the child, another time you might just express disapproval, another time you might use explanation. And so vary what you do from one situation to another. And obviously it's going to depend on the particular misbehavior as well. And so you're going to take that into account. Finally, you want to try to observe how your child reacts to your reactions. In other words, you want to try different things, as I said a moment ago, by using variety. But as you're doing that, you want to see what works and what doesn't work. For some children, yelling at them is enough. I've seen children who, if the parents just raise their voice, the child feels really upset and starts to cry. And I'm not talking about crocodile tears. I'm talking about where the child really is very sensitive and gets upset easily that way. And so for a child like that, you don't have to go to 100 miles an hour and just start spanking them. Right? You can just yell at them or just express your disapproval, even with gentle words, and that may be enough to get the child to stop that misbehavior. And so you want to not only use variety, but see what works and what doesn't work, and then use more of what works and less of what doesn't work. And so you're going to find that's much more effective than just using the same reaction all the time. Now, again, the idea is to use what's effective, right? Use what accomplishes the goal of reducing misbehaviors. So by trying different things and seeing what works and what doesn't work, eventually you'll find what's most effective. And so those are the main points I'd like you to keep in mind when you're using reactive discipline with your child. Obviously, there are many other approaches that are available, and so we can just think about those if we want. If you're interested in getting more information about this, first of all, I'd like you to express if you like or don't like this video, so please do press like in the bottom below the video. Also, please do subscribe. There are a lot of other videos on the way. I'll be talking more about discipline and I'll be talking about other kinds of issues as well. So please do subscribe and you'll be then alerted to other videos that are on the way or as they're released. Also, if you want to get more information about parenting, you could check the Parenting Literacy website. That can be reached at www.parentingliteracy.com. And there are a lot of articles there about discipline and about other kinds of practices you can engage in to help nurture healthy, happy children. Also, if you're particularly interested in disciplining children, you might want to check the Discipline of Children video program on the Udemy website. That's udemy.com. And the Discipline of Children program is one in which I go into great detail in ways to discipline children. It's about 2 hours long. It has 7 different lectures, and I go into reactive discipline as well as other kinds of discipline in some detail. It also comes with a 53-page workbook. And so the workbook has a lot of exercises, has a lot of thought-provoking ideas and questions for you to think about. It also comes with a pre-test and a post-test so that you can test yourself before you start and after you're finished to see if you've made progress in understanding the issues. So again, I hope you've liked what you've heard, and I hope you do subscribe and that we can be in touch earlier in the future as you see upcoming videos. Thanks again for listening to this, and have a wonderful day.